Welcome to Fear Porn Propaganda, where we will discuss 9/11, military-industrial complex, secrets of the New World Order. And today we are going to discuss Magick with a CK. What are your thoughts?
Hello out there, I'm Wisecraft, and my thoughts on Magick with a CK are very interesting. It's associated with very old magic that goes different directions, and it has like a dualistic pattern to it. They call it the negative and the positive, and there's also a mix. And I'll go into more deeper elements of that later in the program with the notes that I have set aside. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on it first.
Oh, yeah.
And what research you have been doing since I told you about it.
Well, some of my research actually, looking back, dates to about when I was 25. And I found a book called Treatise on White Magic. And actually, no, how old was I? I think I was 22. But anyway, it was a very interesting book. It was written by Alice Bailey, and I read it, and I'm like, man, this woman is a genius. And I found more stuff by Madame Blavatsky, and that led me into research about the Theosophical Society, which quickly turned very dark, and kind of dark magic in a way was shown in some respects to be like aligned with Satan. And I'm like, oh, well, that's weird.
Right.
You know, kind of distance myself from that a bit if I can. And so I've also done some more recent historical research, which kind of puts things into a better perspective for me, and I think it's pretty cool. I'm happy to share, because it all kind of starts where, like, you know, the Stone Age, essentially, when we were shamans and spoke to spirits and tried to invoke the clouds and, you know, things to do what we wanted and talk to animals and things like that, kind of evolved.
Right.
Because it's a very interesting spark that we each have inside of us to try to connect with nature and make sense of it in our own unique ways. But there's an overarching kind of progression that this method or modality of thought has led us throughout the course of history to where we are now. And anyway, so I guess it goes back to Babylonians, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd start there. They were interesting because they
Well, you were telling me yesterday about Egyptian connection.
Well, the Egyptians were heavily influenced by the Babylonians, it's been shown.
Mm-hmm.
And the Egyptians were a very creative society. I mean, the kind of mentality these people had was just like one of intense personality and creativity, and they were an African culture. Obviously, these were brown people. A lot of times we don't recognize that these were, you know, brown people.
Yeah, with no hair because of all the lice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was it the lice?
They all had wigs made from human hair.
All right.
But they actually didn't have hair. They were like, everybody was bald.
Mm-hmm. But they were musicians and artisans, and they invented plays and things like that. I don't know if they invented it, but it was definitely in practice that far back.
Yeah.
You can show, which is astounding and beautiful to think about at the same time. Well, they worshipped all kinds of gods, right?
Yeah.
One in particular was Thoth. And we can't talk about magic without talking about Thoth, because he was the Egyptian god of magic and music.
Right.
Yeah, of harmony. And so, like...
Yeah, I've attached to Thoth in the past. Originally it was Anubis, because he was like a guardian, you know, of the undead. But Thoth was interesting to me because he's like a philosopher, geometry, creationist, he created himself essentially after he was thrice born. You know, he came back. You know, through his own will, and the idea of like in the Emerald Tablets, it says that he was like one of the Atlanteans, and he was like a son of the progenitors of the in-between of Undal, the essentially some sort of brain island, and left brain and right brain wouldn't communicate with each other. So there was an in-between brain, the hypothalamus, essentially, that acted as three people that would travel information back and forth from one side to the other. And one of those people was his father, was Thoth's father.
Okay, so you have the merging of the masculine and the feminine, and then this area, this merging of the two of them at the same time. That's where we are. Like as a species, if you think about it, masculine and feminine are just two opposites of the same thing, the same like coexistence. It's not like we're two different species. We're the same species.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, we were talking about Egypt. Okay. So trying to put this into historical context for me is the most important to me. So trying to go in order of things is important to try to remember.
Yeah, because you're more of like a chronological time scale kind of or perceptional person, right?
Yeah, I have to put it together. And then I can kind of imagine myself what it was like in those times. What it was like to be alive and try to imagine what...
And aren't you working on like a timeline thing?
Yeah, I am working on a timeline.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to do that. And we could probably show it at some point. Take pictures or whatever. Or you diagram it out.
I'm sure it will be like a lifelong project.
Well, whatever. However it works for you. When you're finished in the future.
Yeah. Just marking dates.
Yeah.
Things happen. And
I'm doing a similar thing with events. And maps and stuff associated with the timelines, so I understand how kind of like how the dots are connected to events versus like situations versus solutions, what they call solutions, you know, that they have already placed out. I start seeing the pattern to it when I look deeper, and I've been realizing that if I document the dates versus the event times, you start seeing a correlation of these different things that were going on at the same time. They're being reported, but they're not being looked at.
Oh yeah, I started realizing that certain things were happening around the same time, and then that's another interesting way. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so like same with your timeline thing, it's like that has to do with the correlation of massive like scenarios really playing out at the same time.
Yeah. And
we're not really noticing because you're only focused on one of those at the time. See what I mean? So when you go back, you see that there was other scenarios that were happening. And probably other people were focused on it, but you weren't.
Yeah.
You see, so I ended up doing that, and that's where I'm at now, and it's like really deep with the whole Jade Helm 15 thing, which will be a future project.
Okay.
Go ahead. Continue with the Magick.
Oh yeah.
We were at Egypt.
We left off
a little further from there.
So the Phoenicians took a lot of Egyptian methods of like incantation and sorcery and whatnot, and culture, because I mean, as profound as it is, the Phoenicians spread it, and then also connected in their own way their lettering system and numbering system with magic and with the stars and sacred names and things like that. And that's really an amazing, you know, that's the next step that magic sort of took, as far as we can tell, from that time period.
Okay.
We don't know exactly what they were doing, or even stories could just be any fantastical thing you can imagine.
Interesting. So how did it go from like that kind of magic to the illusionary type of just with the sea?
I don't know. I think, yeah, because if you look up magic, it's sort of like it distracts you in a way.
Yeah.
That's what its job is to do. It's just um, they can't get away with doing what they're doing without fooling you in some way, and they're just showing you this, fantastical way of doing it.
And it's
But
always
that's not what magic with the CK is all about. And
no.
that's,
I was just saying, but it seems that they've kind of killed the CK and have focused on the C
yeah,
in these days.
exactly. And then even like mysticism that we see in recent history is sort of blackened, with characters like Aleister Crowley and Blavatsky and just crazy people.
Yeah, pretty much that are trying to open portals and stuff in their own mind.
Yeah, but genius minds that they were,
True. I think there's a fine line between genius and insanity. It's like a double-edged sword, and you're like walking along it, and you could just fall off at any moment in one of the directions.
Seems like a very perilous duality.
Well, look at all the people that in history that we kind of admire that are insane because they're geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't grasp
exactly.
that.
I mean, we constantly demonize these people throughout history, whoever they are, the magicians. I was going to try to go through with history and then back through, but I don't have time for that anymore. So we should say that the Greeks came along, right?
Yeah.
And then Pythagoras who came along. It was like 500
But did the Greeks have magic with the CK?
The Greeks had, yes, they had certain beliefs, and they were ontological, like believing in God in one sense or another, but not really naming it. And the study, just the natural world and law, and trying to understand what those laws were, and trying to read what clues they could from things like numbers and, things that have been handed down to them through history.
Right.
So we've had, orders of people and priests and religions and doctrines and all kinds of things like that have been impediments to kind of a different modality of thinking that's been pervading through human history that gets constantly oppressed in one way or another. And sometimes it's no fault of our own, it's just...
And then what happened next after the Greeks?
Well then you have after the fall of the Roman Empire, where like a culmination of Greek philosophy and thought had this like magical culture in a way. But I mean, it's a dark time because people are always finding reasons to kill each other. And then the Christian religion that came to dominate the Roman Empire, and then with the fall of the Roman Empire, all of that knowledge was sort of persecuted. Mm-hmm. It was like dashed away. They tried to dash it away into history as though it never happened. Mm-hmm. But relics have survived throughout history, and they were kept safe in monasteries and places like Egypt or Syria or something like that.
Probably the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah, that was a definite turning point for history. And it was all about bloodshed, It was,
according to the history books.
Yeah.
I have a theory on the Library of Alexandria.
Well, they burned Pythagoras' library down too, though. They were very mystical, and a lot of his works were lost.
Yeah, but the fact that they burned him down, or whatever, if it was an accident, yeah, I'm sure it was on. I'm on the subscription of that it happened on purpose.
Oh, and John Dee's library was sacked. That John Dee had the most like the largest library in Europe or something, or in England, of occult knowledge and things like that. And people,
when you say sacked,
a mob of people came and burned his library.
Okay, yeah. So again, seems like that's set up for certain nefarious reasons and such. Like either they wanted their stuff they did it themselves because they wanted their stuff to not be seen ever again.
No, it was,
or somebody else did it to them, so
pretty
nobody
good
else could see it. But obviously, they would copy that stuff somewhere before they burn it because they would think of it as valuable to them.
Yeah, you want to keep records of things.
And you want to just keep, and that's essentially what the data center is all about. It's like a record keeper of everything.
Yeah. So it's like, where did I get my knowledge? You know, where did I find out this stuff? You know, just searching on the internet, going to encyclopedias, and finding tutorials and things like that.
Exactly. And you go through sources, right? You find the sources?
Yeah,
right.
I definitely try to correlate information as I go.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's what I like about you, is that you don't just like fall off on some thing and then focus on that, and like you seem to go directly trying to find where the thing comes from.
Exactly. There's been
the root.
Yeah, for me, it's like there's been so much throughout history already of people just hunkering down and holding to their beliefs or whatever it is, and for whatever reason they do it, that it just sort of falls apart at some point, and I wind up asking myself, where do I fall in all of this?
Mm-hmm.
Where are my beliefs?
Let me ask you, where are your beliefs or whatever? Do you have any? Because you're not like me in that way. You don't have a list.
Emotions.
Yeah, and you have emotions, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't.
As it pertains to magic.
Oh
well, I do have
yeah,
ideas.
Because I mean, you're talking about your. Well, I talk about my list that fluctuates based on truth and lies, and that I use research to fluctuate it, basically, like make it go up or make it go down, and then that forms my opinion, which would be my belief, right? Everybody's opinions essentially leads to belief.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is your thing like that? Do you have a thing?
Like an existential art, I think? Yeah, I do. And I do have like an inner kind of ontological argument as well, but I don't sort of align it with God because I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm like, I don't know what God is.
Yeah. He's on the list in my thing.
Yeah,
but he's not like the truth, and he's not like the lie. He's kind of in between.
All God is the barrier beyond which you don't have any more information. He's just the use.
Yeah, it's something you can't understand.
Yeah, something you can use to explain it.
Exactly. Like
the rest of it.
An in between where you need something there. And you're like if you have a hole that you need to fill, you can use that perception, and that would fill your hole, if you will, if you're in the spiritual sense.
Yeah, you do hear a lot of different metaphors about God taking like.
And where does magic come in with that?
Oh yeah, we were talking about magic, man. I think magic is really more interesting than religion. I mean, I do study religion, and I do.
But there is a religious factor to magic, and that's where you get cults.
What?
I said there is a religious factor to magic with a CK, and that's where you get cults.
It's just an interesting idea, and maybe it is just a distraction, but
it could be. I mean, it's an old idea that hasn't died yet, but has tried to die. Like things have tried to kill it. That's what we've noticed. There's definitely like a force that's trying to stop us from knowing that, or whatnot. And that could be God. It could be Lucifer. It's hard to say. It doesn't. If those things even exist.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? We both are like, don't believe those exist.
The fear that the Christians had about magic, and that's why it kind of died for about 1,000 years, is because Um,
I'm just talking.
yeah.
Yeah, continue.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Got distracted.
Oh, that's all right. Back to Magick with the ZK. Is this like, you know?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was talking about how Magick died. So Christians basically thought that you were like summoning demons and stuff like that. So you wanted to stay away from like satanic stuff. They basically want to make you, afraid to go to hell.
Right.
Right. So be wary, and then God will judge you. That sort of thing. Just live your life.
There's a fear aspect to it.
Yeah. Live your life as best you can, and try not to die too soon.
Well, I don't understand that fear perception. I think maybe because I lack emotion.
Yeah.
I do fear. There is fear aspects, but I understand that if you learn what the fear is, you learn behind the fear what creates it, then it doesn't affect you anymore. And that's what they call understanding. Right? So if you understand the fear, no more fear. It's like if you go into like movie bases, like or books, like the Dune series. Fear is the mind killer. Is the term they use in that.
Yeah. And going to the Crusades were an intense time. Those were what brought back manuscripts from these places in Syria and Egypt and whatnot, in monasteries hidden away, and especially I think toward the end of the Crusades, around the end of the 13th century and beginning of the 14th century, because it's at that point where the Crusades end, and there's kind of a lull of time.
Right.
And then you start hearing, inklings of people bringing forth new ideas freely, and some of them have to do with science and art, and things, kind of like an energy force, like Thoth in a way. So bringing back like a type of magical energy into society to sort of invigorate it once again. And so they start like deciphering these old documents. In that time during the Renaissance, they found the works of Plato, and then of course they also found several books by the author they called Hermes Trismegistus or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically took a lot of knowledge and compiled it into these volumes, and then the most important one is the Hermetic Corpus.
Mm.
And then, of course, the Emerald Tablets are one of them too. And then
that's one that survived the burn, because it was obviously in the what do you call it, Library of Alexandria.
I think there were some interesting things in. I venture.
The Grimoire.
I venture to guess that maybe
that's another magic book.
These volumes were held
CK.
in Alexandria. Maybe they were.
Actually, I think most magic books with a CK, the old ones, the actual scripts, were called Grimoire.
Who are they?
Grimoire is like the old magic books.
Oh, okay.
Written by old sorcerers and whatever, And the oldest one is the Solomon's.
Oh yeah, the Magic of Solomon.
Yeah, and the one he used to create the ring.
Oh yeah, we had these weird.
Which is magic. So we're talking. This is about that, and it has to do with that Babylonian time that you were talking about originally.
Mm-hmm.
Because Solomon was in the Babylonian age.
Yeah. So it's like these messages we send to each other through time,
Right.
You know, and like you always sort of harken back to an earlier age, and that's exactly what they were doing in the Renaissance. In their, you know, they were classicists.
Mm-hmm.
Classicism was prevalent in that time period. So the more mystical you could make something, the more interesting it would become, and so you could spread your ideas more quickly. So they, I think, in a way, foolishly used the idea that they, I don't know, who knows just like for real where this knowledge came from or how old it is. Maybe it was a compendium of information that they were able to keep records of throughout those many ages. It's a really deep philosophical thought born of Greek ideologies, and it's really, you know, prevalent in them. Pythagoras was really another interesting, you know, I mean, he was like the first philosopher in a way. But what I'm trying to say is that in a way, there's always been like a battling back against this sort of magical energy within humanity
Mm-hmm.
that seeks to understand, you know, what the nature of the universe is, and in many ways helping us to reveal some of those sources, like the fact that energy is matter, or matter is energy. Yeah,
And
you
energy
know,
can't be like destroyed or created; it will only be changed. So magic uses that element.
yeah. So you have these elements everywhere. We try to we strive to understand multi dimensions, you know, and try to like conjure an image of what that might be like. But they exist on these like, you know, such small scales that it's like they're it just goes on forever, it seems, doesn't it? To me, the universe seems infinite, and I've accepted that as like an axiom, like something that I recognize as being true without feeling that it, you know, it deserves any further thought. You know, of course I ponder it, but that's like a staple of my consciousness, a staple of like my reality.
Well, for you, is the universe within or without? Like
It's
outside or is
it's
inside?
both.
Both.
It's always going to be both. There will always be a dualism, and between them, there will always be a union. And without them, there will always be others. And it's sort of like an image of harmony and spheres. And, you know, if we try to imagine in some of the really fantastical and creative ways of our ancient ancestors, then, you know, we could potentially carry ourselves off into another dimension with this stuff if we ever figure it out, right? We'll be able to live forever, and that's been another sort of promise of magic, like with early alchemy, which became early medicine, which became chemistry, which became medicine, and then the idea that we could be free from sickness and to live healthy and good lives. So it's amazing the parallel that you see between modern science and some of like our earlier ideas about what technology could do for us, where it could take us, where it could take our consciousness. And so we're seeing like a more prevalent theme develop in our own modern times too. So it's really interesting to go through the whole history of magic, and I wish I could, but I don't have any more time.
Yeah.
And I want to talk more about the future, and you were talking about like
I wanted to relate like what it was going on now, like with like how they kind of push a magic agenda now. Like they stopped doing it for a certain amount of time. Now they start doing it again, and it seems like it's saying it with a C, but really doing it with a CK.
okay.
In the references to these movies or shows and things like that. Aside from the technological stuff, they do the magic stuff or the fantasy.
Okay.
Now, what's your take on that? Like, have you seen any stuff like that? Like, I don't know what you watch lately, but I have people around me that kind of I need to watch stuff with them. They make me watch stuff with them. So I end up seeing like these types of things, and sometimes I'm just watching like a horror movie or something, and there's the horror perception that uses magic.
Yeah. Exactly, it's been demonized.
Exactly.
And that's what our modern perception of it is like, it's black magic. You know, you don't want to like look into it too far because you're not really going to understand anything anyway. You know, move along, nothing to see here.
Yeah, and if you do actually,
if you really do
study that, you have to kind of go deep and get into like understanding deep like you have to get into categorizations really.
Yeah, I know, and it's interesting to do because I come out of a very like spiritual nature, and so you find difficulty aligning yourself with certain ideals. And I personally haven't been able to align myself with any particular set of ideals. I tend to live in a genuinely good nature and try to be as considerate as I possibly can to other human beings. You know, I don't harm them. I don't cheat them. I'm, you know, a fair person. But what was I saying? Anyway, we find ourselves in an interesting predicament in reality. You know, we only have a very short period of time to understand any of this, right?
Yeah.
There's a word for that, or there's like what's it called?
What's the word?
I can't remember.
I don't know. You have to look it up.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it was great having you.
Yeah, I gotta go
for this time. You know, we'll have to continue next time, and then I don't know what we're going to talk about next time.
I was gonna eventually get into like talking about future technology, because that's always fun.
Magic and technology.
Magic and technology, because what we imagine
it's very similar.
What would be magic to us? Like if you could step into a machine like they did in the Elysium movie, and you're cured of cancer, and your body's young, and you're beautifully perfect tan, if you like. You know, you could
maybe we're replacing magic with
revive
technology.
Your body at will, and then you could choose whether or not to die. How awesome would that be? I mean, you could live forever if you wanted. Well, not forever, but eventually you get tired of it, right? Or you go crazy. And if you did go crazy, you'd have to have protocols for dealing with someone who was like that, because you know.
Yeah, but like what they kind of show, like on that Elysium and whatnot, is like a predictive programming type of thing. Like they're trying to show you what they want to have happen, because they don't have that ability right now. They're just showing you they can create the illusion of it, right? Because the movie shows that it could be done, but in reality,
the extent of our imagination.
We don't really have it.
That's where imagination takes us, but technology is soon catching up to certain
it's like technology is meeting our imagination.
Yeah, we really have medicine to thank for. I mean, we have magic to thank for medicine.
For medicine,
exactly. So, I mean, no hard feelings, magic. Really, I stopped to think about it just because I felt it was a worthy endeavor, and I tend to think that some of the messages that I've heard from our ancient philosophers of old kind of ring true to me in some sense. Like, in many ways, very prominent philosophers I've wanted nothing to do with. Like, as soon as I start hearing their message, I'm like, maybe this makes more sense in French, because it doesn't quite make enough sense to me.
Exactly.
But the Hermetic tradition has a really interesting ring to it. It talks about dualism and stuff like that, so I think it's interesting. And I'm just killing time. So, alright, dude. I'll catch you later, homie. Cool. Peace.
Alright, so I'm noticing we have a roseate canine in the chat, and you're putting on some interesting stuff, so I wanted to actually say this out loud so it gets recorded. So you want to say learning magic is like learning how to create fire by poking your fingers in the flames. The only thing to learn is how to leap from this to that, like jumping from a bank into a river, then you river. It's interesting. And then he said, most stuff you read is tainted by greed and the glorious, victorious, rewritten take on history. Clever men withered, chasing fool's gold. So, I wanted to actually show you what I've come across on my notes in Magick, and you guys can get a take on that and see what you think. I'm going to actually present them so you can see them, so it's easier. There you go. So this is an overview of Magick with a CK. Magick is the fifth element, the stuff of life. Its power, often called Heka, pronounced he, ka, or, as the author prefers, Heka, is derived from existence itself. The force of life powers it and derives it throughout the multiverse. Every being, even non-sentient ones, use Heka to exist. Sentient beings and some special animals can feel its pull and its strength, while some sentient beings can actually store Heka and manipulate its power to bring about a desired effect. There are as many types of Heka as there are planes of existence. In addition to some other more mysterious forms which lie beyond the scope of mortal comprehension, the most common type of Heka, however, is preternatural. That sort stored and used by mortal practitioners. Supernatural Heka is the second most powerful, and conversely, less common brand. It is usable by those creatures and beings of the so-called supernatural planes. Entitled Heka is the most powerful form of magic, as mortals understand it, used by beings that can only be called gods. Philosophers and scholars suggest that there are other, more powerful types of Heka, but these are so beyond the scope of mortal understanding as to be essentially impossible to study. Among those capable of using preternatural Heka, mages and priests tend to be the most powerful. Mages rely on logic and reason to understand and utilize magic, and thus trust more fully in their mental processes. Priests rely instead on their faith and emotions, trusting in their spiritual nature to store and engender magic. Some practitioners rely on their physical skill and brute strength to achieve magical creations, such as Heka forgers, but they cannot achieve the power that those who specialize in mental or spiritual magic can. Regardless of the manner in which practitioners achieve their magic, their ability to store Heka, the power of magic, is based upon their knowledge and understanding of the skills most appropriate to the trait and type of magic used. Dwemercraft, priestcraft, Heka forging, etc. These knowledge, skills, areas are referred to as Heka-generating areas, a misnomer to be certain, as it is not the KS areas themselves which produce and limit Heka, but the individual practitioner's understanding of the multiverse. Heka can come in many forms, of varying degrees and types of usefulness. Pure Heka, that which is commonly used by most practitioners, is the stronger sort. I'll be right back. I have to get the book. Okay, so it is divided into three major categories. Positive Heka is used by the forces of good and is a powerful source of order, mercy, and energy. Negative Heka is used by the forces of evil and is powerful, a source of chaos, pain, and entropy. Only those beings of great goodness or evil utilize positive or negative Heka, and then very carefully, in betwixt the two, is mixed Heka, which is the most common sort utilized by practitioners. Impure Heka, known variously as mana, orgone, chi, baraka, etc., is Heka which is utilized and stored typically by societies who are primitive in their knowledge of Heka.
The back door was open this morning.
Its storage and operation. This sort of Heka is often engendered by natural events or sources, whether those events or sources be rainbows, animals, or even human beings. Impure Heka has various penalties for its usage, dependent upon the type being used. Often naturally occurring, impure Heka can be collected by primitive practitioners who are unable to generate Heka themselves. Once these practitioners use this impure Heka that they have drawn and stored, it does not regenerate within them impure Heka, such as chi, which comes... Hold on a second.
I got a call. Sorry. I got a call out to the landlord.
Sorry about that. Okay, so had people coming in and bugging. Happens every once in a while. So, where was I? Impure Heka has various penalties for its usage, depending on the type being used. Often naturally occurring, impure Heka can be collected by primitive practitioners who are unable to generate Heka themselves. Once these practitioners use this impure Heka that they have drawn and stored, it does not regenerate within them. Impure Heka, such as chi, which comes from within and requires a great deal of training to tap, even then, chi can often be used only in limited physical applications, such as physical combat or healing, by all but the greatest of masters. And these are what it can use Heka. Heka use and storage is primarily restricted to sentient beings. In a given society, 1 in 500 individuals are able to control Heka enough to utilize castings. Of any given sample of 100 such Heka-able individuals, an average of 50 are restricted to spiritual Heka, 25 to mental Heka, 15 to physical Heka, 5 to spiritual and physical, 3 to mental and physical, 2 to mental and spiritual, and 1 can utilize all 3. Furthermore, all of those same 100 Heka-able individuals, 1 may be a full practitioner. Finally, of those same 100 Heka-able individuals, 1 in 10 can also gather Heka through their mind, body, or soul, whichever is appropriate. Of those capable of tapping into 2 sorts of Heka, 1 in 10 of those can tap into 1 trait, is also able to generate Heka from his other traits. Of those capable of tapping into all 3 sorts of Heka, 1 in 10 of those who can tap into 2 traits can also tap into their 3rd trait. These demographics are typical of human societies and are used as a baseline. Other sentient species will have varying demographics. For example, dwarves have an unusual high number of physical practitioners and few who rely on their spirituality. Elves are almost capable of manipulating spiritual Heka through physical and mental practitioners are extremely rare. Orcs, they typically rely on impure Heka with maybe 1 in 100,000 being able to use pure Heka in any form. These are two major types of practitioners, magi and priests. Well, I guess whoever put this together actually believes in dwarves, elves, and orcs. I used to when I was younger, but I don't necessarily not believe in them. I put them on the list, but it's more like in the fantasy realm, of our creation, in my understanding. So it could be used in this understanding of what they were talking about earlier with the multiverse. I think that I can agree with, okay, dwells, orbs, and orcs could be in a multiverse. Plus, we also recreate them with our own perception, with our movie creations and such, and watching them on the screen, recreating these images, building them into reality more physically than just in our minds or in books. Anyway, to continue. It utilizes any available power, channeling it through rational thinking and logic. This can only be achieved through full knowledge of Dwemercraft, and at least one school of Dwemercraft, priests specialize in priestcraft and gain full practice only through belief and obedience to a deity. Those practitioners who do not fall into these two types are considered to be of a lesser sort, as full practice is not available to them. They are, however, powerful in their own right, able to wield magics almost as powerful as magi and priests. And then I have a section on castings, which gets really strange. I remember reading this before and I was like, what? So just bear with me. If you have no idea what all this means, it doesn't really matter. Just do your research, look up Heka, you'll find some more information. A casting is any use of magic to bring some desired result into existence by a known and remembered series of gestures, vocalizations, or rituals. There are 7 basic types of castings delineated by how long it takes to engender an effect once casting has begun. The 7 types of castings include the eye bite, charm, cantrip, spell, formula, and ritual. Listed in increasing duration of time, each of these will be discussed in detail later. Each casting requires some amount of Heka to be imbued to creating the effect. How much is related directly to how high a grade the casting is. All castings are based upon the 7 laws of magic, except those of priestcraft, which are based upon the canons of faith. So I have those things too. So here's the types and sources of Heka, because we went into that. So we're going to kind of go deeper into understanding what preternatural, supernatural, and entitle magic is. So there are many sources of free-flowing Heka of all degrees, mineral and vegetable substances of the material plane, such as quartz or mandrake, are 2 examples of naturally occurring preternatural Heka, as are knowledge, skill areas which generate Heka. Certain natural phenomena, such as rainbows and volcanoes, can generate preternatural and even supernatural Heka in rare circumstances. Supernatural mineral substances, such as mithril, are very rare, and vegetable substances of entitle power, such as ambrosia, are rarer still. As mentioned previously, there are degrees of magic: preternatural, supernatural, and entitle magic. All 3 forms are capable of influencing reality to varying levels of power, though each follow a similar set of rules. So preternatural magic is the weakest known level of magic capable of affecting reality. It is also the most common of the 3 sorts. Preternatural magic is measured in 20 grades of power, which emanate from 3 sources: mental, physical, and spiritual. All castings that HPs use fall somewhere within these 20 grades, though some extremely faithful priests are known to be able to call upon even greater power which approaches the supernatural. Preternatural magic is what this work focuses on primarily, but even those of greater power operate on the same basic principle. Some sources of preternatural Heka include mineral and vegetable substances, often referred to as regents. Castings rely upon crystals, gems, and other minerals, often require working, crushing, or powdering the material during or before the casting is initiated, though some castings may use them otherwise, cut and polish. The Heka storage capacity of the stone depends on its type. It is generally a coincidence that those capable of holding the greatest Heka are often great value or size. Herbs and other fauna can typically hold or channel less Heka than minerals, and they are often used in healing and castings relating to living things. The possession of knowledge, skill, Heka generating areas, is another manner in which preternatural magic can be tapped. Practitioners possess an amount of Heka determined by their status as a low, partial, or full practitioner, as well as those Heka generating KS areas they possess, as well as for some trait Heka. More will be discussed on that topic later. And I think I have that too. So natural phenomenon can also provide a supply of preternatural Heka, though this is often in an impure form. Heka generated by natural phenomena such as rainbows, erupting volcanoes, tornadoes, hurricanes, or earthquakes is often referred to as baraka. Baraka can also be found in dogs, camels, wells, springs, cats, mountains, still pools, ring stones, horses, holy places, waterfalls, or ancient trees. This source of preternatural Heka is rare, indeed, and those individuals who can tap into these sources are rarer still. And then we have supernatural. So supernatural magic, the next most powerful degree of magic is, and that which is stored and utilized by supernatural creatures such as demons, divai, and avatars. It is 10 times more powerful than preternatural Heka, and thus requires 10 times as much Heka to empower. Castings of this level of power are more versatile than those of the preternatural sort, capable of affecting reality in such a manner as to engender fantastic feats. This is the most powerful sort of Heka that can be utilized on the material plane. Because they cannot use their title magic on the material plane directly, gods must inhabit an avatar, often of supernatural capability, through which they can interact with the material world. Supernatural magic is derived from those planes beyond the preternatural planes, but not taken from the astral sphere. These planes are logically enough referred to as the supernatural planes, composed of the celestial, nether, imperial, and entropical planes. Creatures native to the mundane sphere cannot tap into supernatural Heka until they have transcended beyond their mortal coil, and only then, when awarded in such a manner by one of entitled force. Typically, it is only those native to the supernatural sphere that can manipulate this degree of power. Okay, and then you have entitled magic. Entitled magic is the stuff of gods. It is 10 times more powerful than supernatural magic, and 100 times more powerful than preternatural. Entitled magic is able to affect reality at its most basic level, moving mountains, wiping out entire civilizations, and granting powers to those of lesser ability. Though entitled magic can affect the material plane from without, it cannot be used from within the material plane. Gods can utilize all 3 degrees of magical power, though they utilize entitled magic sparingly. Overusage can easily result in the destruction of an entire plane if entitled magic is misused by these most powerful beings. Unlike preternatural and supernatural magic, entitled magic has no castings as mortals understand them. The being need merely concentrate on the effect he wishes to occur, empower it with entitled Heka, and the effect occurs assuming that he has enough Heka to expand on the effort. Entitled magic is not limited by KS areas or devices, but by such abstract concepts as belief, worship, and entitled heredity. The power of entitled magic is derived from the entitled planes, that of the abyssal and astral planes. For example, the Fey world, Lord Pharos, father of the gods, wields the most powerful entitled magics. He is thus considered a greatest deity. His brother Dagon and Pharos, first generation of children, Betshapa and Baalthor, are merely greater deities, and still they are capable of creating entire worlds and engendering life. The children of these 4 deities, who consequently worshipped by less individuals, are of lesser commensurate capacity. Lesser deities may merely be able to create diseases, to wipe out civilizations, and to move individual mountains. Because these lesser deities are so weak on the entitled scale, their comparatively few worshippers are not even capable of all grades of priestcraft, and may be limited to as little as grade V castings. And then you have the laws of magic. So there's the 7 laws. And the 7 laws of magic upon which preternatural magic relies, excepting that of priestcraft, which is described next. These 7 laws, established millennia ago by long-forgotten scholars, not only provide structure to mankind's understanding of magic, but also rule and define magic much like the laws of physics define our reality. Each of the laws is explained below in detail. And there's no below, I'm just moving it to the next one. So, number 1, the law of sympathy. The law of sympathy operates on the concept that certain objects or beings have a relationship to other objects or beings. In essence, it suggests that each object is connected in some manner to another object, and those objects closely connected can have power over one another. Many offensive spells rely heavily upon the law of sympathy, whereas the following law of antipathy and antipathy is typically used defensively. The law of sympathy can be separated into 2 distinct divisions: homeopathic and contagious magic. Homeopathic magic, this sort of magic relies on a relationship between 2 things which are in some way similar. For it to operate, an object similar to the object of the spell is necessary, such as a clay figure to represent a man. It operates on the principle that given sufficient similarity in its series of acts which reflects effects, these related effects will trigger the cause, like products, cause or cure. Contagious magic exploits the relationship between 2 connected or seemingly unconnected objects, which were formerly a part of each other or maybe associated together. For example, a twig relates to a tree, but an acorn relates to all oaks. The part represents the whole. Its principle is that once apart, still connected, and always apart. A part. Association from a link between things. And number 2, the law of antipathy. The law of antipathy is a converse of the law of similarity. It operates on the principle that two objects which are dissimilar will naturally repel one another. The law of antipathy is paramount to many defensive spells, though it could be used offensively to ensure that something beneficial does not occur to a foe. It is separated into three divisions: heteropathic, repulsion, and isolation magic. Heteropathic magic, this division of the law of antipathy relies upon the natural tendency of opposites or dissimilars to remain such. This division is further subdivided into innate and engendered effects. Innate effects utilize things or situations which are readily different to prevent such things or situations to conjoin or associate. Fire opposes water, clay is different from iron, etc. A practitioner relying upon innate heteropathic magic could hold a block of wood before themselves, as if it were a shield to be protected, or ritually bathe in their subject to make themselves or them resistant to disease. Engendered effects cause something which isn't inherent dissimilar to become dissimilar through some process. For example, a dead, dried snake is dissimilar to and repels a live one when properly worked with Deka. Repulsion magic concentrates on things, obviously for no immediate apparent reason, tend to repel each other. For example, the smell of sulfur repels most living beings. Repulsion magic operates on three different levels: mental, physical, and spiritual. Repugnant effects affect sensory reception, sight, sound, odor, etc., which repel the recipient. Threatening effects such actual or suggest actual or imagined physical pain or death, such as objects to which the being is susceptible, have a harmful potential, or are of generally hostile nature. Opposing effects are those which repel by providing an effect which is diametrically opposed to the nature, ethics, values, beliefs, etc. of the beings and or those it serves. For example, good repels evil, dark repels light, beauty repels ugliness, etc. This does not rely solely on those things which are diametrically opposed. However, dichotomous equals tend to be absolutely repellent. Jeez, these words. Isolation magic. This division of the law of antipathy prevents a subject from entering or even nearing an area prescribed or contemplating some action which is prohibited. It prevents cause from having effect, or effect from its cause, or action from realization. And the law of ritual is number 3. The law of ritual is unique from the other laws of magic in that it is by far more strict and flexible. It rules that certain patterns must be followed in order to control and use Deka to gain the desired effect, force, and or material. All castings which are ritual use this law primarily, though they may in some other way pull on one or more of the other laws. And that brings us to the law of change. Number 4. The law of change deals with the alteration of the physical or energy connected to the physical. It is most useful with being subject to time or probability, or both, which most creatures of the mundane spheres are subject to. The law of change operates on the concept that Through the manipulation of Heka, massive alterations both in actual physical structure and in the motion of things are possible, affecting either or both time or probability. The law of change is composed of two divisions as follows. Metamorphic magic. This division deals with the physical alteration aspects of the law of change. For example, this sort of magic may be used to alter facial features, gain or lose weight, or change the muscular mass of a subject. Permanent changes are possible with metamorphic magic, but only with great expenditure of Heka. Motive magic. Motive magic concerns itself with momentum and inertia, energy, and the natural course of things. It could, for example, cause things to suddenly move or stop moving, adding or subtracting velocity, or reverse the course of aging for a brief span of time. Motive magic alters energy of many sorts, from velocity to probability. And number 5, the law of emanation. This law deals with energy as it flows in its natural and prescribed channels. It enables the tapping of various sources of energy. Heka is, of course, the most important of these various energy sources, but it also includes temperature, electricity, light, etc. Though it can seem to involve velocity, i.e., speeding up the movement of air molecules, thus increasing temperature, it does not actually provide motive energy. That is the purview of the law of change. By increasing or decreasing energy, one can greatly influence influence capability as well. This law concerns itself with the generation and direction of energy coming from things. And the law of conduction, which is 6, the amount of energy energy presently stored in or flowing through a subject are influenced by this law. It concerns itself with controlling to what use pre-existent energy can be put, alters its flow, etc. It does not deal with the generation of that energy. It does the law of emanation. As does the law of emanation. There are two major divisions in the law of conduction as follows. Direction. This division allows one to dissipate or intensify energy and to channel it through conductive routes. For example, a human standing in a field during a lightning storm is already in danger, but by using the law of conduction, a practitioner can make the storm release its energy any conductive source. In this case, our field-bound victim. Transportation. This division both channels and controls the energy vibrations and frequencies, thus allowing the practitioner to walk through walls, travel through time, or step into another physical universe. And that brings us to the law of obstruction, which is very small. Number 7. The law of obstruction is the opposite of the law of emanation and conduction. It prevents energy from flowing, increasing, decreasing, or being directed. This law also diverts energy from a prescribed channel to some undesired one. Castings, which rely on this law, negate, dispel, retard, restrain, lessen, etc., other effects. This law is absolutely vital to many protective castings. And that brings us to the canons of faith. So, these are the canons of faith. Or these are the canons. As mentioned previously, all castings rely upon the laws of magic for understanding and power accepting those of priestcraft, as the Heka provided by knowledge of priestcraft comes primarily from detailed forces. Those castings follow a different set of rules, known as the canons of faith. Also, unlike the laws of magic, the canons of faith each are consecutively more powerful with the canon of the initiatorial being the weakest, and canon of the hieratic circle being the most powerful. They rely primarily upon the source, sphere, or plane, from which the Heka they use comes, as shown below. The canon of the initiatorial power emanating from the mundane and material planes. The canon of the consecrational power emanating from the preternational and elemental planes. Canon of the sacrosanctional, that is a weird words, power emanating from the positive negative planes. Canon of the numinous power emanating from the ethereal planes. Canon of the darker mysteries, power emanating from supernatural and nether powers and beings. Canon of the radiant mysteries, power emanating from the celestial plane. Canon of the transcendent mysteries, power emanating from the entitled planes. Canon of the supernatural or supernal mysteries, power emanating from the pan-probable or probable temporal planes. Canon of the hieratic circle, power emanating from the astral and abysmal planes. And then you have the multiverse information. Magick and the multiverse are so integrally, I don't know how to say that, linked that the author would be remiss without discussing its structure and relationship to magic and its control. The multiverse covers the whole of existence, though the descriptions that follows are by no means complete. What is described here is the multiverse as mortals understand it, to the best of their ability. Listen to this person talking like that person's not immortal, right? I guess the author isn't immortal because of the way that he's referring to himself or herself. I don't know if it was either. It is theorized that the multiverse is indeed far more vast than mortals know, and even deities may not have full knowledge of its existence or extent. The multiverse is composed at its most basic level of planes and spheres. A plane is a single area of infinite size, composed by a universal concept, which typically contains many, if not an infinite number of smaller spheres. A sphere is a discrete manifestation of the plane's dominating theme, typically created by the mental force of a deity. A deity cannot create a plane, though they may, through the usage of their entitled powers, create spheres, which obey the concepts of the plane in which the sphere is located. Wow, that's a mouthful, right? Come on, go down, damn it. There you go. It is perhaps easiest to imagine the multiverse as a series of concentric circles. At the center of these circles lies the material or mundane plane, composed of many spheres, some of which are nigh infinite themselves. Earth and the universe in which we live is one of these many spheres. Feyworld and Earth are two examples of others. As it lies in the center, the mundane plane has no overriding concept, but it's composed in part of all other concepts, filtered through the various levels of the concentric circle, which is the multiverse. The next circle in our conceptual multiverse are the preternatural planes, such as the elemental planes, the positive and negative planes, the plane of shadow, and the ethereal plane. The ethereal plane is unique amongst these in that it is considered to be adjacent to everything in the preternatural and material planes. And perhaps with the entirety of the multiverse. It is placed on this ring because of its power and influence relative to the other planes, not because it physically exists on a metaphysical concentric circle. The supernatural planes exist beyond the preternatural and are divided into two types. The upper supernatural planes are composed of the imperial, celestial, and concordilician planes. I'm going to try to say that. The imperial plane concerns itself with pure fire, energy, order, law, and justice. The concepts of the celestial plane include beauty, truth, universal, free will, clarity, reason, and peace. The concordilician, or supernal plane is a co-mingling of imperial and celestial, with the principal lesser nature of the astral. These upper supernatural planes are obviously the planes of goodness, as they are all influenced to some degree by the astral. The lower supernatural planes conversely deal with evil. They are the nether plane, which deals with dominance, oppression, violence, and malign nature. The entropical, which is composed by the conceptualization of randomness and disorder, leading to devolution, or devolution, destruction, uniformity, energylessness, and stasis. And the pandemonian plane, which is the commingling of the nether and entropical plane with strong influences from the abyssal plane. The final ring of our concentric circle is composed of the ential planes, which are the most conceptual of any of the other rings. These planes are divided into two sorts, the quasi-ential and the ential. The quasi-ential planes are the temporal and the probable. The temporal plane deals with the passage of time. It does not think or link to absolutely all of the other planes, but its influence is pervasive to varying degrees. The pan-probable plane is all pervasive, but it is limited by how time operates in a specific plane or sphere. The pan-probable is the power of infinite possibility. The ential planes are those created by the conceptualizations of good and evil. The astral plane is that of ultimate good. It is the ultimate source for positive Heka, and its power reaches out to all other planes, even the astral in varying degrees, usually dependent upon how close that plane is in the cosmic geography. The abysmal plane is the converse that of ultimate evil. It is the most powerful source of negative Heka, including anti-Heka, and it is the only known gateway to the anti-multiverse, which exists conversely, but forever separate from our multiverse. Like the astral, the abysmal plane reaches across the entirety of the multiverse, affecting the other planes typically, again, by proximity. The question arises that if the material plane was created by the juxtaposition of all the other planes, but that the other planes were created by the creation of concepts, how did the multiverse come to be, or has it always existed? Some suggest that the multiverse sprung from the astral plane, as it seems to have the most powerful influence on the multiverse. Others point to the pervasive nature of the ethereal plane, as well as its lack of a concept, and suggest that it was from that plane that all others were created. Others yet suggest the entirety of the multiverse composes the supraplane of Magick, and it was from Magick, as a sentient force, not requiring a cause for an effect to occur, that the multiverse sprung into being. Long considered the fifth element, it is notable that Magick does not have a representative plane of its own, the question is of cosmic scale, which even deities may not have the answer for. If they do indeed know the answer, they're certainly not talking. So that's what I have pretty much on that. For today. And let's see, people are talking. Hey, Eric, did you want to come in and talk or whatever? And Rosaic, did you want to come in and talk? Linda, you want to come in and talk? I could put the invite you guys if you want to say something. See. Boom. So yeah. So my take on Magick with the CK now, after all that, is that basically it seems that that's what the cults use. You know, they use that perception in order to carry out their scenarios and stuff that occur that we kind of witness. You know. Let's see. I don't think I have anything else on that. That was just all where I was going today with my information. I wanted to get it out there like a couple weeks ago, but the powers that be weren't allowing it for some reason. I wasn't able to do it in any form, and so I had to wait. And so sorry about like not coming on the last couple weeks, but I got it out today, so that was good. Yeah, because there's other stuff that we've gone into. I don't need to go into. So yeah, I think that's it. I'll go ahead and close out for today. Thank you guys for being here. And chatters, thank you for being here. Thank you, viewers. And you know, thank you, Anon, for showing up and giving your history perspective on Magick with the CK. And that's me signing off for today. Wisecraft out. Peace.